from the crisis that is the COVID-19 pandemic. And now the event is live from Embu County, where my colleague Brenda is. And of course, that's what I leave you with. My name is Grace Kuria. Thank you so much for joining us. I leave you in the capable hands of my colleague Brenda Zeda Radido.
So much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us here. We're coming to you live from County 14. That is Embu County, the county of opportunities, different agricultural opportunities in this county. You've enjoyed our stay here. But the reason as to why we're having this important, the reason as to why we're here in Embu County, let me start it from there. It's because Kenya is joining the rest of the world in celebrating such an important event today, a day that is celebrated every 16th day of October. It is a Friday, the 16th of October, 2020. We're celebrating the World Food Day. However, on a sad note, not so many Kenyans, not even Kenyans, but not so many people globally are able to celebrate this important day because of COVID-19. It has an adverse effect on food security. So that is why we are here in Embu County to talk to the men and women of expertise, matters food security here in the country, social protection, how can farmers be helped, helping families who've been affected, matters technology, and also matters public-private partnership, how the government can work with the private sector to ensure that farmers are helped during this time. Now, you're not only watching us from, on KTN News to get this live production, but you're also getting us from Farmers TV, one of our sister stations, and also our guest here on the ground, Asanteni Sana, for joining us. My name is Brenda Zeda Radido. It is a pleasure having you tuned in and also seeing you, our viewers from wherever you're watching us from. So let me just give you, the profile of some of the guests that we have for you here this morning here in Embu. So it will be on your screens right now, anytime from now. And let me start with Mr. Hamisi. So let's know who Mr. Hamisi Williams is. He's currently the assistant of the FAO assistant. Let me just take that again. Hamisi is the assistant FAO representative and FAO representative for Kenya in charge of country programs. Hamisi has served as the technical policy and institutional governance advisor to the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. He also holds a Master's of Science in Agricultural Information and Communication Management from the University of Nairobi and Masters of Business Administration in Strategic Management. Others include Cochrane, a fellow in agricultural policy from North Carolina State University, it's in the United States of America, USA, a data management tool from Harvard University, still in the US, and project management from University of Adelaide in Australia, and agricultural products and trade policies from AMI Institute, Beijing, China. So such a rich profile for Mr. Hamisi Williams. He's one of our guests this morning representing FAO. And from Hamisi, let me get the chance also to introduce Professor Amadi Mbogo. This is not a new face to us. Our viewers actually interviewed him earlier on. Professor Hamisi Mbogo, Idi Mbogo, is the Principal Secretary, State Department for Crop Development and Agricultural Research. Professor Mboga holds a PhD in biology from University of Konstanz in Germany. I hope I pronounced that name properly. And so he's here also on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture, on behalf of the CS, just to talk to us about matters to do with food security in the country. Now, next, we have, let me introduce you now to the lady. We have Dr. Dina Jeruto Boras, a Senior Research Associate at the International Potato Center, that is SIP, also SSA, Regional Office based in Nairobi. She holds a PhD in the field of agronomy from the University of Tasmania in Tasmania. Wow, she'll be telling us more about Tasmania in Tasmania. But then also, apart from Dina, Dr. Dina, we also have Dr. Jamlek. So Dr. Jamlek Muturi is a County Executive Committee member for Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives in the County Government of Embu. Dr. Muturi holds a PhD in Agricultural Econtomology from the Kenyatta University, that is KU. He also holds a Master's of Business Administration, Global Business Management from the United States International University, Africa, that is USAU, Africa. He also has a Master's of Science in Agricultural Ectomology from the Kenyatta University and a Bachelor of Education Science in Botany and Zoology from the Kenyatta University. So our next guest, apart from Dr. Jamlek Muturi, is Caroline Mboga. And Caroline Mboga actually is seated next to me, and this is her profile. She is the co-founder of Kikai Foods. So she'll be telling us more about Kikai Foods and more about World Food Day. And lastly, I have Alea Kagwara, is the country director, Global Alliance for Improvement to Nutrition Kenya. She's also the co-chair with the Sun Business Network. Such a rich profile of the men and women with me here, our panelists this morning, just to talk to us about matters of World Food Day. So you can talk to us also on our social media platform at KTN News KE, at Zeta Brenda. I'll be sampling your feedback and your questions that you also have for guests. So let's delve straight into this by beginning, by getting the mind of our guests this morning. And I'll start with you, PS, Bwana PS. We are celebrating this important day of World Food Day. What is World Food Day and how important is this day to us as a country?
Thank you very much, Brenda. The World Food Day is usually celebrated on 16th of October every year. This is the day when FAO was founded in 1945. FAO is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And it's an important day because when we celebrate food, we also celebrate life, because we can't imagine life without food. And there are many Kenyans, there are many global citizens who are still struggling to get this basic right of access to food. So as we celebrate, we also take time to reflect on what we can do to improve access and to good quality food, which is a right guaranteed in the Constitution for every citizen.
All right, and Jeruto, we are talking, when we look at this year's theme, is about grow, nourish, sustain together. This is such a rich theme for this year. Jeruto? Yes.
Thank you very much, Brenda. And I think this is a special day for most of us who work in agriculture, the farmers themselves, as we reflect, as PS has just informed us. The theme really goes very well in terms of we have to grow, and so food has to be available. We have to nourish, so the food just not availability, but it has to nourish. And for us to be have a healthy and active life, we need that nutritious food. And we just don't need the nutritious food. We also need to sustain the environment, or to sustain our climate, to sustain where we are producing the food. And this we can only do together. And that's how the theme is going to grow, to nourish, to sustain together, that our actions is about our future. Thank you.
Right, and let me bring in the youngest person in this panel, Caroline. We're talking about grow, nourish, sustain together. And I like what Jeruto has said, in terms of this year's theme. And as a young person, probably young people are looking at us here and they're thinking, I'm a young person, like how is this really important for me in terms of agriculture, food security here in the country?
Well, thank you, Brenda. I'd say for us young people, mostly we don't dwell on agriculture. But then to think about it, we can't do anything. As long as you're in any profession, you can't do anything without agriculture. So it's important for us to actually sustain this thing about to sustain agriculture, know where we get our food, so that at least we can be able to sustain the future of our nation, the world. It's very important. Yeah.
So let me bring in Dr. Hamisi. We're talking about World Food Day 2020, and then here comes in FAO with another 75 years on this important day. So it's like FOI celebrating two important things, you know, and FOI is an organization that deals a lot with agricultural issues, you know, and when we talk about nourish, because someone can think about nourish is just being nourished, but in terms of food and this year's celebration.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, everybody, the fellow panelists and those who are joining us from home. I think, as you put it, I should have been the happiest person today because we are being born twice. First is that 16th October is FAO's birthday. Actually, for history purposes, FAO was born some days earlier than UN itself. So FAO prides itself being even older than the UN itself. And that tells you that those days before the nations came together after World War II, somebody was already on the table and bringing the conversation about food and how then this can be made available. Coming now to the years that followed, you could find the first conversation was purely we just want to know that we're talking about food and it's available. But coming to the years that followed because of other challenges, the conversation has been changing. And the FAO has been really trying to also change with the conversation about food. And this is why you see we're no longer saying it's just about providing food or giving food on the table. But we are saying if you give food, that is like grow, but go a little bit further than that, and then make sure that food that you avail is that which is dietary sound, so that you avoid issues of malnutrition, issues of overnutrition, which is like obesity, those who will not be getting the necessary micronutrients.
Dr. Amisi, just hold on, just hold your thought on that, because you'll be getting into nutritious food in terms of availability of nutritious food, and I can see your answers are also getting into the question that I had for you about that. Okay. But I mean, being an important day, just on a light note, I believe there is cake after this. It's World Food Day.
Thank you.
Because FOI is celebrating two important things today. But let me bring in Leah. You, this question I'm directing it to you because it's about, you deal about a lot with matters to do with nutrition. And so what is nutrition and availability of nutritious food as we celebrate this important day? Because, you know, even as Dr. Misi has said, it's not just about kukula nyama, mboga na ugali, ama, you know, people like us who come from the lakeside, ukisheke hapo, mboga, ugali, na samaki, you're sorted.
Thank you, Brenda. And as we think about this World Food Day today, actually, it's an important question you're asking, and for our viewers to know. It's not just about eating and getting full, and that's what Hamis was just about to allude to. It's about the nutrients in the food you eat. So we speak of a diversified diet. So when you eat, your food should contain all the minerals, the nutrients, the starch, the oil. So you should really eat a diversified diet. So you shouldn't eat, like we do, most of us, a big piece of ugali with a small piece of meat and veg. It should actually be very diversified and well balanced so that your body takes in nutritious and the nutrients. Some of them are micronutrients. You don't even see them on your plate, so that your body can function optimally. Mm-hmm. So if you think about the World Food Day, it's not just about food security and being full, it's about food and nutrition security that Professor Boga was just talking about right now.
But then, Dr. Jamlek, let's look at it in a realistic way. You're talking about a mama mboga who can't even afford, probably during this time of COVID-19, can't even afford a plate on the table. So how can this person have that nutritious, balanced diet?
Thank you. Just really, plugging into what my colleagues have talked about, the issue of diversity is not about the costs, because you can still get macro and micronutrients actually from the basic indigenous foods. So that if you take telele, if you take managu, you still get the vitamins that you can get from spinach and the like. If it's carbohydrates, you don't really need to just hold on maize. You can still get carbohydrates from arrowroots, from sweet potatoes, which the mama boga can comfortably get at the local perspective. So we are talking of diversification in terms of different food crops, which some of them are indigenous that have been there over time. Therefore, the mama boga can comfortably get all these from the local perspective, and also embracing kitchen garden farming, whereby you just require to have a small plot. You can even grow veggies, even if it's in a very small remote area, on pieces of waste materials. And you just water with the kitchen water, the one that you pour it out. You just put it on a spinach that you have grown, or terere that you have grown, and comfortably be able to raise some food from it and eat.
All right. And let me pose this question to the PS. So what is the impact of COVID-19 crisis on food security?
Yeah, I think when COVID-19 happened, we were all worried whether it will lead to a food crisis. And we moved very fast to create a food security war room to make sure that the impact was managed. So we were focused on 3 deliverables: access, availability of food, access to food, and then the cost and pricing of food. So that meant farmers had to go on producing. We developed guidelines for that. Markets had to remain open, so we developed markets for that, guidelines for that. Distributors had to continue moving across boundaries, whether there was a lockdown or no lockdown. So we developed guidelines and made sure that that happened. And of course, at that time, we were also tracking prices. So we made sure that so long as the food moved around normally and people did not panic, the prices remained stable. And so there was a lot of communication to people not to panic, that food will be available. And for the vulnerable families that could not afford food because most people were laid out, they were registered through the Nyumba Kumi system, especially in the urban areas where they can't grow their own food. And they were facilitated with the cash transfers using mobile money. We have moved away from carrying sacks of maize around the country. It wouldn't have been appropriate also for a COVID-like kind of situation. So that is an elegant way in which we addressed all these issues. And you can see there were no food riots. Food is available. Prices are stable. Actually, they are going down.
All right. And you know, you're talking about prices were fair. But then I remember in one of the markets that I go to, people were really fighting for lemons and ginger to make what they call dawa. But then, Dr. Misi, it's good that the PS has talked about the transportation of food. But then let's look at the reality. Of course, COVID has affected food in the agricultural sector. But what are the prompt measures that must be taken to ensure that food supply chains are kept alive both domestically and internationally?
Yeah, good question. If let me first connect to you, especially what the PS has alluded and actually elaborated. First, to tell you went to a wrong market. Next time, try to find the best market, because the ministry worked so hard to make sure that supplies were okay. But this is what, if you look at the theme of today, there is the last word there, together. Now, together there means what? For quite some time, we've been having this narrative that we want to do the value chain approach in food production, in food processing, supply, movements, up to where it's on the table, what we normally call as farm to fork concept. But then you realize there are a number of other aspects of food production and availability, accessibility, affordability that really affect your chain itself. These are the people that are also just going to be alongside what chain you have, and whatever they do or don't do really affect what you intended to achieve. Now that, if you look, is what now brings the narrative from just the chain. We start talking about food systems now. And if that system is broken, if it's not working in any way, then you are not able to deliver. And that is why, if you got the PS clearly in the food security war room during the COVID-19, one of the things you wanted to do there is that every system is functioning. Every aspect of the system is functioning so that you have the whole delivering as one. And then you have your intentions well, delivered without any hitches there. So that is what we need to focus on, that delivery of food, quality food, affordable food, must no longer be looked at from a linear perspective. It is really a compound thing that we must holistically approach.
All right.
And that is the togetherness in today's theme.
Right, and just before we take a short commercial break, let me bring in Leah. And we are talking about the impact of COVID-19 on food security, and I like what the PS and Dr. Hamisi have said. But let's look at it from a realistic point of view. We have nutritious problems during this time of COVID-19. How can that be corrected?
So thank you, Brenda, for that question. So like Hamisi is saying, it's a whole food system with different actors. At the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, we believe that the food system actors must be very well coordinated to work together to address the challenge of malnutrition. During COVID, as the professor was just about to allude to, we were worried that it was going to get very bad. So one of the best things to do, which actually we did as an organization and many others did, including the government, we believe that businesses are a big part of the solution to the malnutrition problem. Is supporting businesses to make sure that they, as Hamisi have said, retail, supply, process, and make available, accessible food in an affordable way that is safe and still nutritious.
Mm-hmm. Right, and Jeruto, you know, at some point, the reason as to why I asked Dr. Hamisi about ensuring that there's that food supply, the chain it's not broken, both domestically, which is locally, and internationally. It's because at some point we saw some food that we expect to come from the international companies are no longer getting into the country.
Yes, some of the food that we get it from, we are definitely not producing enough.
Yes.
So we rely on others, and that's why the word again, together. We can only work together across the border or within the border. So there were those restrictions that actually happened, and it affected, and I think some of potatoes, where I come from, I come from International Potato Center, we deal with potatoes, and sometimes we get potatoes from Tanzania. Of course, there was cross-border issues. But one thing that really happened is that the government moved very, very fast and ensured that distribution within the country was taking place. Reopened the markets that had been closed for a very short time. So whereas it did not really affect food to a larger extent because of what the government took over immediately or what the government brought in immediately, it affected international market. In terms of trade within the global market, COVID-19 really affected the food production and distribution and cross-border.
All right. And as I told you, our viewers at home and also our guests here on the ground, that we have people from different backgrounds, but with a lot of expertise when it comes to matters of food, just to give us, a way forward as a country as we celebrate this important day. So allow me to take a short commercial break. But when we come back, we shall be talking about what does the government, what the government needs to do when it comes to helping the vulnerable people in our community who've been affected by COVID-19 so that they can join us in celebrating this important day, not only today, but going on forward.